I'm Harry Massey, the director of the Living Matrix movie, and I'm really privileged today to be welcomed by Wolfgang Scheinhart, and he really does have a shining heart, and he's an expert homeopath and well-respected Silicon Valley technologist, and also a nest practitioner in his spare time, which he doesn't have so much of. What we're going to do today is we're going to cover some of the science of homeopathy and its history, and more interestingly, where the advances are going and how some of the cutting-edge science and research into structured water and the memory of water help to explain some of these principles. So, well, anyway, welcome, Wolfgang, and perhaps you could just give us a bit of context and history about what homeopathy does, just for the audience.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I mean, homeopathy as such goes really back over 200 years. It started with Dr. Hahnemann in Germany, and he discovered essentially that illness is related to energetic distortions in the body, and that's a key. And from that, he developed different medicinal approaches, but ultimately it all came down to that he said what is important is to understand that in energetic distortions really causing illness in the body, and therefore it requires an energetic medicine to really address the problems that illness develops. So from there, homeopathy as such really, covered the globe. It even was present in the late 1800s as almost a very strong and prevailing system in the US. Unfortunately, at the time, the allopathic society didn't quite like the idea about homeopathy. They shut it down pretty much in the US for many, many years. In the interim, it kept on developing throughout Europe. It's a very accepted practice in Europe, in various other countries, Latin America, for example. It's being used in Africa as well as in Asia. And the essence of it is you can use either minerals or plants, but it's really about capturing the energetic resonance of the different material. And it's really about putting that reference of a resonance back into water, and it's being diluted to the point where there's no substance left in the water itself. It's only the energetic imprint. And the idea is really to identify the similarities between that substance and the energetic imprint that that substance creates in water, and relay this with the client's constitution that they have. So there's sort of a symptom mapping between what the client displays in their illness with the symptoms that have been identified via taking some of these remedies. The problem that is still until today is that many people ask the question, how does it work? Because you're diluting something into water, there's practically no substance left. So what does happen? And I think this is a challenge that we as homeopaths have still today, and we cannot really explain this. We know it works because we see the results of it, but we can't really explain, at the technical or at the science level, what happens there. So now I'm asking you, Harry, I think there are some new advances that you might be able to talk about today, and that maybe shed some light on how that actually works.
I'm sure. Well, I mean, I think what's really interesting when you're looking at homeopathy and information medicine is actually, well, there's a lot of parallels, and perhaps obviously homeopathy was started and existed 200 years ago. But if we just look at the last 50 years, there's been quite a lot of prominent researchers that have looked into this curious thing in water, where water can have a memory. And one of the first people to do that was a Frenchman called Benavista, and he basically ran a number of experiments where he would take some pollen. In fact, he would dilute it to the point that there was no molecule left, where there was just information in that water, and then he would he would basically put a cell, and then he would have a cell, put that diluted homeopathic water with the allergen in next to the cell, and then he found that the cell would react to that allergen just as though a normal allergen was there. And that idea actually, he tried to get it published in Nature. Nature wouldn't publish it to start with, and there was a whole hoorah. Nature did end up publishing it, and then also Benavista managed to repeat that experiment in a number of other labs across the world. But unfortunately, because it really went against the sort of the more conventional biochemistry viewpoint, in fact, things got so bad, and he had so much pressure from the press and science. He actually committed suicide. So that wasn't a great ending. But another Frenchman who actually won a Nobel Prize for discovering the HRV virus, which was Professor Luc Montagnier. He I think it was about 10 or so years ago. He basically took Benavista's work and sort of made quite a large improvement. And this experiment is basically absolutely groundbreaking. If people don't believe in the principles of homeopathy, they really should look up Luc Montagnier on the net and watch some of those videos, because what he was able to do is basically he was able to take a bit of a virus and the genetic information from a virus. He would then record it with a very, very finely tuned microphone, and basically the virus would sit in water, but there was enough vibration within the water from the virus to be able to basically create a sort of a frequency distribution. That sound was recorded, and then he would then transmit that digital information back to another vial. He would add a number of base pairs to this liquid, and just from the information sent to that vial electromagnetically, basically the DNA base pairs were able to then recreate that viral fragment, I think to a 98% accuracy, which is basically it's completely incredible, and shows how information itself is able to basically provide a framework for proteins to go on to be made and do their job. And that research was sort of taken a step further by another scientist who was called Professor Peter Fraser, who was, I was fortunate enough to spend 10 years with him back, 14 years ago now. And what Peter did is sort of he looked at it from a clinical point of view, and basically worked out the information sets that could create an epigenetic expression, so that, if you imagine how your health actually gets repaired and how tissues grow, ultimately your DNA, or your RNA and DNA basically split, and different proteins are then made to then go and repair different parts of the body. But it's the water that's surrounding the genetic material that will actually go on to basically it's the water that's surrounding them that's actually mechanically giving the proteins the instructions with what to do. And I think Peter was really the first person to say, well, this is great, but clinically what matters. And he basically ended up mapping out the information of different organ systems, like different cellular tissue and different functions of the body, so we could stimulate the body's healing process in a particular way. And it's become a bit more effective than the normal homeopathy, because it's more precise. But Yeah, I know that's
So this
how
is,
I would explain it.
I think this is very interesting because one of the issues with homeopathy obviously is what's the so-called life force or vital force. It has some different names, and it was always used in a metaphoric way. That there is something, some information system, some type of a control mechanism, right? But nobody could put the finger on. And obviously, technology has advanced. We have now more different ways on how we can actually measure things. And I think that is exactly.
So you see the vital force as the body field, if you like, or the field.
Yes, I do, and I think we can talk later also a little bit about my experiences with the NES system and how I explored it and compared a little bit with homeopathy. But I definitely believe that the sort of synonym that has been given by Hahnemann, as far as there's a life force there, he couldn't put his finger on it because there was no way for him to measure it or in some form to detect it. But I do believe that this is really the energy and information field that NES refers to as the human body field. So I do believe that this is the master control system that really is important in the interplay of illness and homeostasis.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting is from most of us think as health as some biochemical outcome, but really, when you're looking at bioenergetics, we ends up going beyond biochemistry, and that concept of the body field. It's actually the body field that's really acting as a master control system beyond biochemistry. Because why should a particular molecule do something, and what's steering it? And I think one of the things we didn't mention about water is 99. Yeah, I think it's over 99% of the molecules in your body. If you include the H2O is within proteins and fats, etc. And then when you're looking inside a cell, most of that is this structured water, and it's the energy and information, or the fields acting within that structured water. It's actually them that are mechanically push this little protein to do that, etc. And it's an odd idea because we're so used to looking for things from a biochemical point of view. But if you look from a physics point of view of like, well, what's directing the energy? Why is that? How is something mechanically happening? You need energy. You need a transfer of energy, and you need some sort of information system or pattern that's directing that flow. And that's basically what we mean by the body field, is that it's a field of energy and information.
Right. I mean, without oversimplifying, but one could even think of it as almost computer or smartphones that we're all accustomed to. There's always a piece of hardware, and it's functioning in and of itself, but it's not really doing a specific function unless there is information and data that actually instruct the hardware to do something, right? And so one could think of
if it crashes, you don't do too well.
Right.
You get ill.
Right. We get viruses. Viruses corrupt data, and then your computer system is not working.
And I think that's where the synonym of viruses for computers came from. I mean, obviously it came in reverse, but it works exactly the same way around. I mean, a virus is faulty information, because a virus goes into your cell and it ends up basically ends up reprogramming it to do something not so good for you.
Right. And also the interaction between the two don't live in and of itself. There is always that dependency between the so-called hardware and the actual information system. They don't exist in and of itself. They are all dependent, and that's, I think, also a very good analogy that one can look at the body field in the same context with our own body as being the hardware.
Yeah, and how do you see the? I think obviously some other principles in homeopathy. Obviously we talked about vitality. I guess there's the principle of resonance and Herring laws of cure. And I mean
coming back to in the beginning, we talked a little bit about the sort of idea that homeopathy is really based on an energy medicinal system, and it's really all about the resonance, right? And the experience that I have with the NES system is, because one of the issues, or let me actually back up for a moment and let me start with what are some of the challenges that the homeopathic community as a whole goes through. And there may be some masters that are out there that have been doing this for decades. They certainly bring a lot of experience and have a much closer target when they need to come up with a remedy. But for a lot of us, the issue is we're sitting down with a client, we're trying to assess their symptom situation, because that's how homeopathy works. We're taking in the symptoms of the patient, we're trying to understand their emotional and their mental state, and then identify really what are sort of the key points and try to map that via so-called rubrics in large books called repertories that have been written in some 100-year-old language. They're getting updated as new versions are coming out, but the challenge really is, how do you take that information and keep it objective? Now, with the best intention that everyone has, there's always a certain subjectiveness to it. You as a practitioner getting the input and then having to determine what is the important thing and how you translate that. So there is, even in that context, a lot of areas where errors can happen, right? It's human nature that you pick the wrong one, you're deciding on a certain remedy, and the remedies in general have a broader implication as far as the resonance is concerned. And that's, I think, one of the key differences with the NES system, where you have a much more targeted approach in the assessment of what is going on as far as the physical, also the mental and the emotional plane is concerned. And it takes out that the subjectiveness of the practitioner and really lets me focus on what the body field itself determines that needs to be repaired. And I think this is a huge step forward. I would almost call it homeopathy 2.0. It's sort of really an evolutionary step, in my opinion, because the basis is still the same, that there is a resonance on an energetic resonance basis. We induce into the body field that tries to correct these distortions. And I think many of us can think of in probably physics classes in the back of our early days in school, where you take a tuning fork, and if you match that up with a non-vibrating tuning fork, then you will see that the other tuning fork will start to resonate in the same frequency as the one that has been stimulated. And so it's that effect of transferring that resonance frequency onto the same matter that is really what's sort of the key in correcting these distortions and energy blockages.
I mean, to me, I see it as like with information medicine or homeopathy 2.0, instead of that idea where you dilute a substance that most likely will create the symptom, instead, I think in homeopathy 2.0, we're saying, well, actually, why not give the client or the person the exact information they need to work optimally? And obviously, that's what Peter did, was record the optimal information. And we haven't really said it, but I mean, myself, I had chronic fatigue for 10 years, and I was actually healed by Peter with this idea, and he just gave me the precise information I needed to trigger a healing response in all my different organ systems. And lo and behold, we're sitting here today doing this, which would have been impossible before. So.
Right. Yeah. And just to pick up again on that tuning fork, I have an analogy that I use relatively frequent with clients, and it's based on another physical law, where I'm talking about a pendulum. So you think about a pendulum on a wall clock. Old clocks have a pendulum. And so a distortion that happens either through an event externally. It could be an emotional trigger, a loved one has passed away, or some event at work that took place that causes a disruption in that energy. And if normally it would come back down and it wouldn't leave us with any resonance. But if it doesn't come back by itself, then it's sort of stuck. But I'm comparing this with a pendulum that is out of sync. It's not swinging in the frequency that it's supposed to. So when we bring in the infoceuticals, then we can actually pair it up with the exact correct frequency, and over time the two pendulums essentially start to synchronize itself. And as I keep putting always the reference pendulum next to it, it will start to correct itself. And this is sort of the non-scientific explanation, but it resonates with many people because they can understand that there's a physical law behind it that really addresses that resonance correction at the end of the day.
Got you. And obviously you've been using this idea of positive information or homeopathy 2.0 for I think a year or so now. And what's been what's been your experience clinically?
Right. So I have a multitude of different cases. I mean, they start with cold flu situations, respiratory issues, cardiovascular, back pains. I mean, it's really a very broad spectrum. And by starting to use the NES system, I was really able to come back with a much more consistent analysis and assessment of the person's health situation, and then correct it in a very specific manner as provision is guiding us, and delivering results that go from immediate using the My Health device. Maybe we'll talk a little bit later about how the My Health device is a part of the NES Total Wellness system. And so some of the immediate reactions and pain reliefs that I have seen, all the way to continuous improvements as the patient takes those the infoceuticals on a monthly basis where we do the assessment. So what has it done to myself is I have a lot more success with using the system. And my success means I have success for my clients, and that's really the more important thing to me, because at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's really about helping the clients that are coming and seeking our help. So it's the effectiveness, the more target approach, and the more consistent results that I'm getting from it. So I have to say, at this point, I'm switching more and more towards my praxis to the NES Total Wellness system entirely. And it's been a real eye-opener for me. And as I said, it's not sort of wiping out homeopathy as such. I think the basics of it still remain the same. It's just a more targeted way of being able to get a client's assessment and help them in their therapy.
Yeah, well, it's more an evolution, and I think it
Exactly.
helped, like some of the science from the last 20, 30 years help to explain and prove it out, which Hahnemann just didn't have access to
Right.
200 years ago.
Right. And one other thing that probably for those who are practicing homeopathy is it's very time intensive. I mean, for those who are practicing it, they know, because dealing with the client's intake, going through the first analysis, you're spending quite an amount of time on that. And with the support of the technology that NES has provided through Provision, it reduces that time. So that helps me not only basically assess the client situation faster, but I'd be able to help more people in the same amount of time that I used to spend using homeopathy or the classic homeopathy. So it's been quite a revelation for my practice.
Perfect. And I guess we were going to talk a bit about the future.
Yeah, that's right, Harry. Why don't you tell us what do you think is in store for us?
Oh dear. Okay, no, that's all good. Basically the future. I mean, I think it's a really, really interesting time period, because I think there's a couple of huge trends going on. I mean, one One is simply a technology trend in that basically technology is sort of maybe not so gently, but it's sort of creatively destroying medicine in a way, because with technology that we've got with Nest, but also with all this huge rise in apps and wearables. Like we're entering this future where everyone is going to know everything that's going on in their body, and that completely changes the relationship really between, I think, the individual and a doctor. And I think it's more going to change to a sort of a more functional, integrative type approach where the doctor or practitioner becomes more of a guide for people's health, because people are going to know what's going on with them. So I think that's one thing, is this huge rise in telemedicine. That's going to have a massive effect. And then in bioenergetics itself, and I guess I never defined bioenergetics, but basically it's when we're looking at biology from a broader physics point of view than generally medicine, and this includes functional medicine and traditional medicine. Most people are looking at it from a biochemistry point of view, and I think what's great is, with some of the science that's coming through, and obviously some more technology, we're basically able to see how energy and information affect the body. And I don't know, with the research that Peter did and Ness has put together over the past 10 years, a lot of that it's almost like we've created 500 PhDs. Like we've sort of seen the big picture of the body field and how it's able to control biochemistry and things that are going on in your body. But there's so much to it. I mean, I think we have we've just got tons of material and boxes of research, but it's really going to take 500 PhD students to sort of look at each individual part to fill out those gaps. So I think it's definitely a very exciting era, because we can see the technology trend, and then this sort of looking at biology from a physics point of view trend. And I think those two things alone are going to, I think ultimately they are going to change healthcare. Possibly we're a little bit early in the curve, or we probably are a little bit early in the curve. But more people are joining in the curve, and that's sort of how change happens. It's like, what do they say? It's deceptive. It's deceptive change at first. You don't notice it, and then it creeps up, and then it just becomes exponential, and then the world has changed. And so I think that's where we are. We're in this beginning of this curve.
Yeah, and I think what was really appealing also to me is that it's not an approach that with the bioenergetic approach that Ness is taking, it's not an exclusive approach. It's really more an integrative approach where it accommodates a certain part of the biochemistry, the biology, even traditional Chinese medicine and technology. So it's sort of a blending mode, taking all the things that work and putting it together. And I think that's what is really appealing, and still being a natural way of really approaching healthcare, because I think we all are swallowing way too many allopathic drugs. I mean, we probably don't anymore, because we have a different way, but I think a lot of people out there are still confronted with, I need to fix a problem, so here's a drug. And statistics basically
this is the most amazing thing, isn't it? It's like, it's actually the body that heals itself. Even in drug medicine, chemistry generally causes some effect, but it doesn't generally heal. Like if people get healed, it's more from a placebo effect in the drug end. And I think, with what we're talking about with homeopathy and infoceuticals - homeopathy 2.0, if that's what we're naming it, it's basically, basically you're triggering a healing response in the body, and then the body does the work of healing, and the same with the analysis side. What it's looking at is, what is the best sequence to heal someone, rather than I guess a traditional diagnosis is, this organ is broken, but that doesn't necessarily, it's a slightly bad analogy, it's not organs get broken, but let's say an organ isn't working properly. But traditionally it's not actually that good to go in and treat an organ directly. Like if you try and treat a very stressed out organ, it might fail further. And I think what's great about these types of approach is like the body field will tell you how to treat someone and in what sequence, and then ultimately the body ends up healing itself. Like it's there's no toxic chemicals left over, there's no this. I mean, the worst outcome is it doesn't work. The best outcome is a bit like me, and you go from being bedridden for years, staring up at the ceiling, to being able to run a business. So
right. That's certainly the case. I mean, very much the issue with when you look at statistics that are out there, 90 or more % of the allopathic drugs are blockers. So one has to ask themselves, well, how does blocking help me to have my energy free flowing and all my systems free flowing, right? So there's a gap between the approach.
Well, there's a lovely expression, isn't it? It's like life. It's like life is basically an energy exchange system, and if energy isn't able to flow and do what it's meant to do in your body, or in fact in any interaction at all, it's death, right? If energy doesn't flow, it's death. So the more things that block in the body, the more closer you are to getting to death. Sorry, drug companies.
Right. So that in and of itself is essentially not a path to really address the root cause. And as you mentioned, the traditional view is really dealing with the location of the symptom. And as we know, that's just that can be a relay point where a lot of the especially the chronic illnesses that we see also in the clinical experience, they all relate out of an emotional issue, a traumatic event that has happened and that is being memorized and that causes an energetic imprint. But it sort of relays in a different way. The body basically expresses itself in, let's say, a pain in the knee or some problems with the liver, whatever it is. But that does not necessarily mean it's to go in and just address that particular organ or that particular location. Because you could do that, but you haven't really removed the root cause that's still there. And I think this is what it's every client that I have when we go through the scan and we get into the area of, let's talk about some of the emotional and traumatic energetic imprints that we can see with the ProVision scan. And it relays immediately with and resonates with the client immediately. Say, yeah, I do remember. Now I see the connection between what had happened in the past and how it's blocking me from progressing in my healing process. And so this is extremely important, and I think that's where NES and the ProVision scan has a dramatic impact.
Cool. And if people, obviously, as NES can basically analyze people remotely, or you can analyze people remotely. How can people get hold of you if they would like you as a practitioner?
Certainly.
He's a good one, by the way.
Well, thanks for promoting my business. But at the end, it's not really about my business. It's really I'd like to help people. You can reach out to me. We're just in the process of building a new website because we're updating it with a lot of the NES and the bioenergetic approach. But you can find us at juvena.com. So that's JUVENA.com. And I think the information will also be up on Facebook or. Well, it should. The link should be just underneath this video. And also, if you want to, if you want to know more information about some of these ideas and like the research of what NES does, and Peter Fraser and myself, the best thing to do is watch the Living Matrix movie, which you can basically watch for free if you opt in at neshealth.com. I think we also actually
there's also a free book as well. So yeah, you get a free book and you can have a movie night as long as you don't eat popcorn, because that's not particularly healthy. Unless you have it without butter and sugar. But anyway, that will probably do.
And you know, the remote scan, so I think you just touched upon this, that is also a very effective way for...
That's the future, isn't it? I didn't really mention that.
Yeah,
it's
maybe you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, actually, well, basically, we're in this era where you can have a clinic in the cloud, and so basically, Wolfgang can just log into the internet. He can see all of his clients' results there, and more, perhaps more importantly, his clients from the comfort of their own home are basically able to see their scan results and have all this other self-help and health information that is pertinent and relevant to their scan results, and then the pharmaceuticals are basically drop shipped. So from Wolfgang's point of view, he doesn't need a big fancy office to help people, and from the end client's point of view, you can basically get your health back from the comfort of your own home without traveling miles in your car to visit different practitioners. And maybe more importantly is I guess you can match up the best clients with the best practitioners, because you're not restricted to location.
Right.
Perfect. Well, I don't know. Well, that was great, and I hope that was informative for our audience. And please, if you've got any questions or anything, there's a Facebook comment form below, or contact either of us through our website. So thank you very much.
Thank you.